sort of spook, sort of intelligence spy person was doing this, and by the way, in a gated community. The person who had not come in by a vehicle because he could not get into the gated community fled down the road and jumped over a walled area, a walled part of the compound, and fled. Police reports have been filed because the following day or two, this same, the main inventor's home had an attempted break and entering. Maybe they did enter it because there was damage to the locks and the doors, and some evidence that there was an attempted breaking and entering, or perhaps a successful one that later got where someone just went in and looked around. And this all started within literally 24 hours after I left that city to return back to Virginia. And this inventor that the Orion Project is now funding had this happen. So this is the kind of thing that, it's not urban myth. This is something that we have multiple witnesses to, and now a police report, and people to. And you have to say, well, who is doing this? And what I tell people is that there's this group called Majestic. In the old days, that's what it was called. That it's sort of a hybrid transnational entity that is both quasi-military and intelligence and has tentacles in almost every agency of the U.S. government, but is also mostly private. It's connected with, financial interest, oil interest, aerospace interest, and the military-industrial complex. And they hire people to do this kind of nonsense. And I think, frankly, that those of you who are listening should contact your members of Congress if this sort of thing is happening, and should actually call for a Department of Justice and FBI investigation into it. I think that it's not just this one case I'm referring to now, although this is an open and active case, but the fact that, for example, we have, and I'll be happy to provide this name, although I do not want to do so on a radio show, the name of this person who is assigned to an intelligence operation and to a military facility that I have visited, who in November, Dr. Loder was there with me, this man committed to building one of these devices for us within about 3 months or so, and it would have been the proof that you can run your home and eventually your car off of the energy that's in the space around us and the air around us. And after he thought he had permission from his 5 intelligence shepherds, he was then threatened not to do so, and was then taken out of his current location and dropped into a rat hole in Iraq. And this is the sort of thing that we have seen in the last few months that I think is going to require that the President of the United States and the Congress investigate to say, who the hell is doing this? And then they start getting pursued. Whoever's doing this kind of harassment and interference with coming out with real solutions for the environment and energy crisis are committing crimes against humanity. In fact, what I have said for years is that they are willfully committing planeticide, and that is the intentional killing or attempt to kill an entire planet's biosphere. And I can't think of a more heinous crime to investigate and to stop. And I think that we have got to begin to ask that our representatives and the executive branch of our government, the President, take an interest in these issues, because these are not urban myths. These are things that can be proven. And it needs to be reined in by the good people who are in government and the good people who are in law enforcement. There are good people out there, and they have to have this brought to their attention. And like many things, I hate to say this, but the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And that's why it's very important for the thousands of listeners of the World Puja Network that they not be passive in the face of this kind of fascist and neo-Nazi type harassment of innocent civilian inventors and electromagnetic geniuses, because we really can't afford to waste another 100 years trying to get a breakthrough event happen here. Our civilization is running out of time to do this, and it's time for the public to stand up and say, we've had enough of this and we won't stand for it anymore, and we're going to demand that our government provide adequate protection and investigate these types of harassment. Now, one of the Disclosure Project witnesses at disclosureproject.org you'll see was a man named Colonel Charlie Brown, and people laugh, was that his real name? And he just recently passed away. Wonderful man. I've been at his home, knew his wife. He had been involved with Project Blue Book and Grudge and a lot of other things, but after he left the Air Force, he became an inventor of these sort of technologies, and he invented an electrostatic system that you can put on a car that would run through a bottle of humidified air, and so that the car was getting 20 to 40% greater fuel economy. Well, he had his prototype stolen. He had his lab broken into. He had harassment, and when he was finally about to make a big sort of business deal with some car dealers, to put him on all the new cars they were selling back about 1980 or so, where he was staying, had a bomb threat called into his room to have him blown up. Now, he did not have that happen, but it was this kind of harassment. Finally, he told me he had put $250,000 of his own retirement money into this, which in 1980 was a lot of money. And he just threw his hands up and said, you know what, I can't do this by myself, and there's no one protecting me. And so this is someone who was a hero of World War II. He was a Air Force colonel. He was a very solid guy. He was actually a rather conservative man, family man, and this man is telling you the truth, and you can see it at disclosureproject.org. And what I tell people is that this is the kind of thing that we can document and have documented that's been going on for over 100 years, where we have become slaves, our entire civilization, to the power elite, the moneyed elite, and the oil and gas and coal super industrial complex, and they play hardball. And I think, frankly, we're going to have to demand that if we really, the current president campaigned on a change we can believe in. Well, here's something that if we could get a little bit of help and a little bit of protection and support, we could make real change happen, where almost overnight we could go from a terminal civilization to a sustainable one with clean, free energy for everyone on the planet. And I think that the people listening to this program need to tell everyone about this World Puja Network interview today and tell them to listen to this and understand how important it is that we all take action, because it's only through unified action that governmental leaders will act, and ultimately we're going to need the help of the good people who are out there. I mean, it's not as if everyone in the U.S. government are part of this cabal. It's a tiny, tiny fraction of operators, and for the most part, they don't know. And we got to put it on their radar screen so that they go, well, if this is happening, we need to provide some investigation and support and protection to people like this team that we are now funding, that you are now funding through the Orion Project and through your generous donations, so that they don't have their lab broken into and their equipment smashed with sledgehammers and their homes broken into again and again and again. I mean, this has got to stop. And the only way to make it stop is to have your support financially, but also to have your support in terms of a public activist position, where you contact the president and contact the members of Congress and say, this is happening, and people who have been victimized by this will do legal depositions to that effect, if need be. We've already filed a police report, but we need your help. And the reason we need your help financially is that we're now employing 2 full-time security people embedded with this inventor team so that they can function. But let's face it, there's only so much we can fund and do, and we need your help to go forward and make this create awareness within the government that these things are happening, and that we demand to be properly protected from these kind of goon squads that have been deployed.
We actually, if you go to the Orion Project website, theorionproject.org, or you go to arrow2012.com, on both of those websites, we actually talk about some of the suppression issues and the various methods that the these quasi-shadowy government people have used to suppress inventors. And a recent example that comes to mind, not somebody that the Orion Project is supporting at the present, but it's